Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coffee with Craig show. We'll be talking about commercial real estate in Central and Eastern Europe. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special edition of the Coffee with Craig show. I'm here with Hubert Abt from Workcloud24 and New Work Offices. Hubert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg.
I see we have a new report out by your company, ESG and Digitalization in the Office Market. Now, today was the big launch and the press conference, correct? And,
yes. Yeah.
I know you're doing this every year, so tell us about this report and why you should read it.
Yeah, that's actually the first edition of this report because, as we discussed previously, ESG was not in our mind, or at least not in our focus 1 year ago. And from Workcloud24, we see a lot of moving parts, of course, which dealing with digital tools, and it comes to real estate, but also ESG plays a major part here. We had a webinar yesterday, and it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, I guess they confirmed that ESG compliance made it to the pole position of every due diligence.
Okay.
That means it was basically, due diligence has 200 questions, and 5 years ago it was question number 189,
Okay.
and now it's question number 1,
Right.
2 to 20. And if you do not pass the pre-test on ESG, they cut you off the shortlist from the beginning.
Right.
They do not even ask about the asset if you have no plan about ESG. And this is why we're thinking it's worth to survey and dig into the course and the possibilities we have. And of course, also get an idea about the challenges which are ahead of us because of what happened.
Right. And with the investors, what are they really looking at? Are they? I see they've got the top 20 questions. The boxes are checked. Is that enough, or are they digging a little deeper?
That was actually the last question of today's press conference, and the question was basically driven. So, in which, if you say 100%, where do we stand? And my answer was we didn't even start.
Okay.
And I guess that's the correct answer to your question as well. Even if you tick the box, then yes, you make a commitment in a way that you say, yes, we comply. But if you're going to the standards, we have about 6 existing standards, coming from sustainable green buildings, BREEAM, LEED, and all these other standards.
Right.
So it's 6. Then you have an additional 11 standards for well-being. That's the S of ESG, right? And then you have different layers, multinational layers like the European Union taxonomy, and it goes down to the local thing. And these initiatives and diverging interests causing basically destruction, or I would say confusion. And that makes it so difficult to grasp, because in the principles, it's kind of easy. Right. I would say from the investor side today, the focus is clearly on the E, that means on the environmental part. And we found out that only if we isolate the E from the ESG and we would only look in that, we would already see a major transition risk for the industry.
Really? Okay.
And for the entire market, especially Poland. I can give you an example. If you're going to the energy sources, and this is basically emission, the carbon.
Right.
It's clear that the windmill has less emission than a coke plant power.
Sure.
Right? So the coke plant is 820 grams per kilowatt hour carbon emission. The wind is 11.
Right.
That means it's a huge discrepancy, right? But setting it to a context and saying, okay, we have a building in Poland, which is a standard building, 20,000 square meter, whatever. We have up to 28 tons embedded carbon per workstation.
Okay.
28 tons. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
One seat, 28 tons.
Yeah.
We can't make up with as we are slimline now, right? But the same seat, having that in France, in the exactly same building, would only be 0.4 tons.
Wow. Big difference.
There's a big difference because France is 90% relying on nuclear energy,
Right.
which is only 12 grams carbon emission, while the coke plant is 820.
Right.
Right. So to give you another example, that means if now you're coming with the helicopter view as an investor and you have this mandate as somebody committed net zero, then you need to invest net zero. And then you have a portfolio of assets in Poland, you have a portfolio of assets somewhere in Europe, in example, France.
Right.
It's a clear disadvantage for Poland to have that.
Right. Okay.
So now what we can do to overcome the situation is only one thing. We need to, as investors, taking initiatives, and then it's not enough to have some solar panels on the roof, because you can't overcome with a solar panel 20,000
You'd have to
square meters.
a lot of solar panels. Yeah.
But you could, for example, set in geothermy, right? Which is an initial investment, which is a high investment in comparison to just going to the grid and getting, the energy from the infrastructure around. But it will be needed in the future to show a certificate which satisfies the client. And there was an interesting finding as well, because we're thinking that's new. It's not.
It's not new. Yeah. Okay.
It's not new. There was an interesting finding. It was 19,000 leases from some guys in the UK. They analyzed it in 2015-16. And the finding was that sustainable buildings achieving between 23 and 26% higher rents, plus they are 8% average more occupied, higher occupied.
Okay.
So if I have, I don't know, whatever, 1 to 5 millions for geothermy as an initial investment, that pays out immediately because I have a premium which I can ask my tenants to pay for the well-being.
Right.
Because
it's probably a better building anyway, I would imagine. Yeah.
It's anyway a better building because it was conceptual designed already towards complying to the standard. Right? And I guess that's the major shift. But if we know that 95% of the existing buildings do not comply today,
right,
then that's a transition risk.
Yeah, exactly.
How you want to move 95% of all existing buildings in overnight towards a standard, as the investor today tells you already, if you do not comply to the standard, I can't invest anymore.
Well, impossible overnight, right? It's going to take a decade or so.
Yeah, but we don't have a decade. That's our problem. We're running out of time because we know about the global warming since 60 years and nobody did anything. And then there was the Club of Rome with the thesis, of the limit of growth. Then was this NASA scientist in 1988 to disclose to the Senate in US the connection between global warming and carbon emission. Still, Mr. Trump denied it 1 year ago. It's not existing, but they know it since 1988. It's proof.
Right.
And now we have the COP26. That means 26 times they sat together and nothing happened.
Sure.
Right?
I was at the COP one in Poland. So
exactly. So I say the capital market makes the game changer here. They are pulling the trigger because they have no chance whatsoever. And we need to set that into a context of a changing capital market. Because you will getting punished if you do greenwashing today.
Right. Yeah.
What was possible maybe still last year is not possible this year anymore.
Right.
They are much more sensitive. It's transparent. The interest rates going up anyway.
Sure.
The national banks do not participate in issuing of bonds anymore.
All right.
So these capital
sources
sources
get tougher and tougher, man.
That means if you go to the bank and say, guys, I have a lending on 60 to 100 value ratio, and they say, where is your plan for ESG? And you don't have one, then they punish you with risk interest.
Right.
And this is why, if you put everything together as a finding, it's a real transition risk for the entire industry here.
Right. Okay. Now, what countries are in, let's say, transitional risk zone? You mentioned Poland, but Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania.
It's not so much a country, of course. It very much depends which energy sources are common in the country. Of course, France.
Because of coal.
Coal is the worst.
Is an issue.
Right? There's no worse than coal.
Okay.
Then it comes gas, and then it comes others. But if you're going for city of Manhattan, there is a Green Council. They did a study on all existing commercial buildings on the island of Manhattan, New York.
Wow.
and they found out that 50,000 do not comply to the standards. But we all know what crap they built there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right. Okay.
So it's not a surprise. But now McKinsey said, if we have such a portfolio, 5 out of them, 100 out of it, doesn't matter, Silverstein properties, exposed in Manhattan, right? We have a portfolio like that. You're, without mitigation actions, you will lose 40% of your revenues until the end of the decade. Well, that means you have 8 years to go.
Exactly.
To lose 40% of your value, right? And this is really immensely impacting us, and we do not realize it now.
What's coming, yeah.
But it's there.
Okay, that's E. So E is a problem I can see.
Yep.
If you're using coal-burning electricity.
You can overcome to increase utilization. You're using digital tools, office passes. We have invented space in the cloud tool. We recently signed in a mobile company. They had 180 employees, and they only took the space for 80.
Ah, okay. So they're already cutting over 50%.
Only the core commitment,
right?
Because the 180 using now our application and using the space in rotation.
Okay. Okay.
So the utilization goes up. That your karma or your ESG certificate is good.
Right.
Okay. As a tenant.
Right. So they didn't fix the electric supply. They just cut the number of people using it. Let's say.
It intensifies the usage, and that's the one thing. But you're coming then to a fair point, because the S plays into the entire system very much, even so we don't know. If you imagine an intelligent litter box, which gives you a feedback that you drop your litter, your paper, your can, whatever, in the right drop.
Location. Oh, God.
Right?
All right, yeah.
It's existing. It's called Smart Bin.
Yeah, geez,
right?
All right.
And then it gives you a feedback on your application, say, hey, Craig, thank you for putting it there. And by the way, we're recycling that stuff. And for that, your personal footprint is, let's say, 20 crumbs. Right? So what we think will happen very soon to raise the awareness of society is that you have this built in your building usage application as your Fitbit. You know, 10,000 steps a day. Right. You only have 8,000. You don't feel good.
Well, they're doing a little bit of that in China right now, aren't they? Right. They're tracking tracking some of each person. Right.
Yeah, but you anyway on the track with that stuff. Right. So I think the interaction. It's called a smart building. The interaction is crucial, and it deals with disruptive digital tools, as I mentioned, the office pass. First and foremost, this space in the cloud disrupts your space because you're only selling half. Right. But at the same time, you're getting an increase of usage, you're getting a better certificate, and the tenant pays more, pays a premium, because the add value on his side is higher.
Right. So they need the services.
You need a service. You need to change from the space as an office approach to space as a service approach. And the smart building I mentioned, it's an immensely growing market. And we got these figures not from the real estate market, we got these figures from the tech market, which supply the sensors and all the stuff needed to fit out a smart building. Right. And there is an interaction and a supply via technology which you do not feel. Mentioned Silverstein properties. Yesterday there was a press release that you enter all Silverstein properties today with your smartphone without knowing. That means you have your entry pass for the main gate, for the elevator, and for your floor implemented in your office application. Right. And it realizes that you walk through. It's like pay as you go. Right. I have a credit card in the phone.
So they know you're using it.
Right.
And they know if you're on time or not to work.
And there you are tracked already. Highly convenient. Everything is there, but it's only course of the using of technology.
Staying on the S here for a second. One of the building owners told me, look, we've done everything we can do, but then we started looking at the tenants and what they're doing as their suppliers. And they said, look, we're running into some problems because their suppliers are not Whatever, they're using illegal labor or something. I don't know what the reason was, but they're like, what do we do now?
This came recently up on a discussion on GRI Global office circle, and there was a guy from Canada, and he said, well, we are far away from you guys, in front. We do not diligence our building, we are making the diligence on our tenants.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they are infecting us. You can do all the homework you do, but if the tenant is not complying from the business, from the sources, how he treats his labors, everything, you have a problem.
Yeah, your building is being affected.
And there you see, this is why I underline the fact we are only on the start. It's already there, but we need to learn to adapt to that, to get then finally the possibility, at least, we can't change the coke power supply in Poland.
Right.
But we can do a lot on our own, to it's like a rating list, which you have the 3 columns of. And of course, the tenant is much more reflecting on the S as on the E.
Right.
While the investor is reflecting much more on the E instead of the S.
Right.
But then in the end, it makes the combination.
And of course, so the owners of these buildings are really going to have to start looking, not just saying, oh, great, we got a lease, let's sign it and get them moved in, but really looking at what their tenants are. Are they really following the through their whole supply chain, I guess?
You need to build up intelligence. Every owner, everybody who is exposed here needs to build up his intelligence to be able, with the implication of digital tools, to analyze and track the risk exposure and so forth, also the gain, which you get by inventing some measurements, right?
So at some point soon, tenants may have a hard time getting into a building because they're not following the ESG
I see
system.
it the other way around. I see much more because the brick and mortar business, as it says, it's bricks, to adjust the buildings, the existing buildings, to retrofit it and to make a master plan of years, as you said, 3, 4, 5 years to get there. This is the challenge on the landlords because the user knows what they like to do. They have an easy life. They just tell you, either you show me fully transparently what is your plan for the next 3 years to get there, or I can't sign because my stakeholders, my shareholders don't allow me.
Right.
So it's not the way that we would not attract tenants anymore, but the tenant making the choice and the investor makes the choice. So if you want to make the deal, and we know now for a fact that post-pandemic we have 30% less space needed overall.
Right, okay.
Overall. So if you want to not fall into this gap of 30% and you stay empty, you need to adjust to the new standard. Simple as that.
Right, well, so if you've been ignoring it, don't ignore it anymore. Or if you've been ignoring it, you're probably in that 30%.
Yeah, I guess we underestimate the time, the critical time, that it's not the thing to plan and to do it in 2 or 3 years. It's the time to start now. This is why the cover of the report shows there is no planet B. The planet will exist forever.
Yeah.
It's about saving the civilization. And to set this in the context is, you do not need to go to Australia and see, all the wood burning, or to Germany last year, all the floods, or the hurricanes after US or something like that, or in the Caribbean. We losing 8.5 million lives every year because of air pollution. Entire pandemic cost 5 million.
Right.
So, but we're losing every year 8.5 million. And this is the context we need to see it. So it's really high time for everybody as a responsibility, at least, to dig in, to build the intelligence. And once you have the intelligence, to check your assets and say, okay, what is something reasonable to do? And otherwise, you really go into this danger red zone as it's getting a transition risks, and you will be faced with refusals from the bank to lend, refusals from the investors to put you on the short list, refusals from the tenant to sign in.
And it's already happening.
It's like an avalanche, right? It's already on the way,
right.
And you don't believe until it hits you.
Right. And then straight to G now, ending up with G. Clearly, companies are also responding to this because they're getting fines, or it's the legality of it, yeah?
Yeah, well, I guess the governance is something we have that already in the IFRS, in the International Financial Reporting Standards. It has a lot to do with the financial disclosures, a lot to do with transparency. And of course, it also has to do not to outsource, to avoid tax payment and stuff like that.
Right.
I would say on a decent corporate level, most of the participants and the players play along with that. I mean, you're never safe. You saw now the Swiss League. You're thinking, it can't happen still today. It happened 20 years ago, and they got punished and forced, and 3 times they were in front of court. We promised to do it better, and they still did it, right? I mean, there's always some bad sheeps or black sheeps in the herd, but overall, I'm not.
Well, a lot of the biggest U.S. companies are set up in Ireland, right?
Yeah. Fair
legally
enough.
And for a great reason, but it's obviously some tax savings too.
Yeah, it's totally fair that there is diverging interests, but I would say for the players in the market, if you have the E and the S in pocket, you have automatically 50, 67% of the scale of G automatically.
Right.
While if you have 67% of the G, doesn't mean you have the S and the E in the pocket.
Right.
So it only works from there.
So, I mean, with the experience you've had and what you've seen and from many different companies, because I know you're leasing them space or trying to lease space from them, where do you see the biggest failures?
Failure is
not with who, but what?
You only can make one failure to ignore it.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, that is a big failure, right? Okay.
As simple as
All right.
As soon you pick it and take it serious,
Yeah.
you will realize it's a change of culture which you need to implement, because a culture is strategy for breakfast. So whatever plan you make and you don't live on what we say, walk the talk, right? It's designed for failure. So that's the thing. Ignoring is the biggest failure. Everything else, it's clearly a subject. Well, what's the organization? How is the backup? What's the interest of the stakeholders? What's the asset? But doing nothing is not an option.
Right. Doing nothing is the failure, right? Or not even knowing you need to do something.
Yeah.
So what percentage of companies are actively trying to say better themselves and get better ESG scores?
If you would ask the market, you would get maybe 50% quote. I have still in mind this forum in Vienna last year in October, and the guy who did the keynote asked, it was about 200 people in the room, and he asked, who thinks that this ESG dingy is really something dangerous for your personal life, for your family? Who thinks we should do something?
Right. Who's taking it seriously?
Yep. 200 arms out of 200 up.
Right. Okay. So they're
100% agreed. Yes.
Right.
We agree. There's something to do.
There's an issue. Yeah. Okay.
Now, second questions: who thinks has already taken measures, serious measures, to comply?
Less, I imagine.
5 out of 200.
5 out of 200. So the other ones know it's important, but maybe not taking serious measures.
And this is why my CEO always tells me, until the message goes through, you need to repeat it 7 times. And this is why we need to address it on every fucking panel, in every discussion, because we need to deploy it through the organization, bring it from the subconscious to the awareness. And from there we go. And then, yes, it's a journey, it's a moving target. But if we do not start now, then I'm afraid there will be really casualties.
Right. So let's say we have portfolio. A lot of these guys are just portfolios. Very few of them own one building. So portfolio manager watching this, saying, well, we're doing some things. I'm going to download the report. I'll read the report. And they're like, uh-oh, what do we do now? What's your advice? I mean, it's a nice report. It's, 20 pages, 15 pages. They read 20 pages. They read that and go, uh-oh, we have a problem. What are the next steps?
Well, the first step, the longest journey always starts with the first step, logically. And as I said, it's an assessment of your assets, of your portfolio, where you logically picking the worst ones and say, okay, where I have exposed risks, right? You do not treat the trophies you have already basically on the more safe side. I don't say they comply fully, but you need to make a strategy, and then you say, out of the strategy, okay, which takes the most, a child, who needs attendance, which needs the most attendance, and how can we fix that? And then you need to compare with your HR power, with your hands on deck, with your financial power and everything, your strategy. How much can I spend? Is it 5% of my budget, 10, 15, 20? But if we follow the findings from McKinsey & Co., which is real data, data out of today's market, it should be at least 10, 15% because you're dealing with your life.
Right.
If you're losing 40% of your value,
that's a lot.
And you do not make it to the list anymore that anybody is interested to invest and buy, then you're in the shark pool, right? And then you're, they are happy to find foods there.
They are happy to at 40% minus, they're very happy to help you, rescue you.
Great opportunistic opportunities, definitely.
I remember probably a decade ago, I remember GRESB, this agency or this association, came out with a list of asset managers that were not up to speed for them, and then some that were, and there was huge losses from investors in America giving those investment companies money to because their portfolios were, let's say, GRESB rated them under what they should be. So and that moved everybody. I saw that moved a couple of them went out of business, but most of them got all hands on deck, fixed the problem, and moving on. So from what they were doing, I'm sure you were listening and hearing about it as well and had clients that were in it, to what's going on now. What's the level of engagement? What's the, is it higher? A higher level, more, now are we at such a level where it's like, wow, that was nothing before. Now it's pretty serious.
Well, again, if you see the entire task and take the 95% serious of the buildings which are not complying to the standard, it doesn't matter to which level we are engaged, because it's a mission impossible to come over overnight.
Right.
So again, if you agree that you need to change the culture first to successfully roll out your strategy,
right,
you anyway need to start just now.
Right.
As the South African says, now means
now.
Not tomorrow.
You just came from South Africa too, as well.
Not tomorrow, but
right.
I'm sure that on all investment boards level are discussions about the ESG. And I know from the big consultant companies that they have a lot of work, and you see popping up ESG dedicated person in each company, which takes it serious, right? So I guess that's the good news, that the message is received, just the plan is not made, and we do not see the results yet because it's impossible to go against a coal power plant energy source. So
if you're using a coal power plant, you're probably going to be using it tomorrow too.
We should basically talk to maybe Robert from Panattoni, would be a good bent on the panel when we're doing our breakfast soon, because he has a portfolio all over Europe.
Sure.
And he sees the different measures he can do, and he deals with a lot of space, right? It's not only the office, it's every real estate, every type of property is infected.
Yeah. Well, he's dealing with a lot of investors who probably have very tough questions about this and expectations.
Yes. So I think the seed is planted and it needs its time, but again, the message is, don't be afraid about these confusing standards and several benchmarks, whatever it is. Start building your intelligence and you will find a way by that. And of course, Workcloud is happy to help everybody.
Absolutely. Well, first read the report, right?
Yes.
That's already a big help, I think, for everybody. And one other thing, just as organizing events and organizing conferences, even if I don't send somebody the agenda, if they're always if we're talking about the conference, they go, yeah, we want to be on the ESG panel. Yes. They don't even know there is one, but there must be one, right? They know I don't send it to them. If I haven't sent it to them yet, of course we do have them, but they're just saying, yeah, we want to be on the office ESG panel or on the, something to do with ESG.
Yes.
So it's, already a standard, and, we wouldn't, there's no even chance of saying, oh, we don't have one. Yeah, we'd be a different business.
Yeah, it was like the last 2 years, how do we bring tenants back to the office, right?
Yeah,
so now that's not the next big thing.
Another part of it, yeah. So. All right. Well, Hubert, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time, and we'll have the report also online so they can download it or have a link in the text to get the report and to be able to contact you or contact your ESG team to see how you can help them, build the thing.
Pleasure. Thank you
great.
for having me.
Thanks for having you. And everybody, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching our special Coffee with Craig show on ESG and digitalization in the office market. Click here to subscribe to the Coffee with Craig show, and don't forget to share it with your friends.